What's up, y'all? This is Eddie here. Welcome to the second episode of Tech Backstage. I'm here with my childhood best friend, Jason Lozo. He is joining us from Seattle, Washington. And Jason, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. I was just talking to my brother the other day, and when we first started talking about doing this podcast, I remember that I've basically been a fanboy of yours since you went to UW to be an astronomer, and I remember that I was always remember I used to bug you on Facebook, like, "Hey, what are you guys working on?" And you'd always like kind of humor me with like the dumbed down, simplified version of like all the hard stuff you guys were doing in astronomy. But anyways, when we first started talking about doing a podcast, I was like, you were like one of the first people that popped into my mind about people we grew up with and just doing really cool stuff right now with technology. And so I appreciate you being here. So I guess first and foremost, like, the question that I have on my mind is, you're an optomechanical engineer at Microsoft right now. But talk to us a little bit about, that journey from, first of all, Ferris High School on the South Hill in Spokane, Washington, all the way to, the giant that is Microsoft right now. How'd you get out of Ferris and get all the way into Microsoft?
Yeah, what a weird journey that's been. I mean,
Yeah.
we both kind of had that winding path that
Yeah.
just kind of all over. Yeah, I mean, I guess from coming out of high school, I mean, kind of just bummed around a little bit for a while. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I worked in a casino. I dealt cards for a while.
Oh,
Just
cool.
kind
Okay.
yeah, just kind of like laid low and tried to figure out what I was doing with my life, and finally just got a wild hair and went back to school. And I was in community college. I fell in love with math. I took a calculus course from one of the best teachers I've ever had. Um, and from there it was just like, yeah, well, I guess I'll go to UW and see what I can do there. It's funny. I actually went in and I was like, I'm going to do computer science, right? Like, I'm gonna go be a programmer. I'm gonna do the typical Seattle, like, drink coffee and sit on my Mac and write all day thing. And I got to UW and just failed miserably at it. It's like really terrible. Absolutely not for me. And I was kind of just wandering around, and I just popped into the astronomy department just kind of on a whim. um, you know, I don't know if you remember, like when we were kids, you remember watching Apollo 13 at my
Yeah.
house and
Yeah.
being
Of
like
course I
really
did.
into that movie? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think something from that just like kind of popped into my head, and I was like, yeah, space, like that seems cool. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so I just popped into the astronomy department. They were like, "Hey, take a seat. Like, let's get you into some courses. Let's sign you up." And I just fell in love with it from there. Like, I took a 101 class and was like, this is my spot. Um,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's the first like weird twist that that
Yeah.
happened. So yeah, from there, like, I did the astronomy degree. I did astrophysics, and took what did I take, 5 years doing it, something like that. Way too damn long.
Right.
Um, yeah. Um, but yeah, I did it, and I kind of got into the research side of it. That's kind of where, when
Yeah.
you move out of a bachelor's in astronomy, you kind of dive into research, and it turns into just research projects and papers and all this. And I
Exhilarating.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I dove into it, and the research was just not my thing. I couldn't get into it, but every time I went to the telescope to like take data, I was like, yeah, this equipment's really cool. Like, the telescope's super cool. I found myself having ideas for, here's how we can improve the equipment, the instruments. Um, and I met a guy named Joe Hunerhoff, who has basically been, my mentor since I was at UW. Crazy smart guy. He and I are still very good friends. And he basically had the same track I did. You know,
Okay.
he was like, "Yeah, I love astronomy, love the
Hmm.
instruments, don't care to take data all day." Uh, so yeah, he and I teamed up, and we just kind of struck out from there. We started modifying the telescopes at UW. UW has a kind of a contract with Apache Point Observatory. It's down in New Mexico,
Okay.
and they have a 2.5 meter, a 3.5 meter, a 1 meter, just like a variety of telescopes. That's where the Sloan Digital Sky Survey lives, if you've ever heard of that. Um, so yeah, so we started just working down there, you know, working on instrumentation and building up the telescopes and doing cool stuff down there. Um,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. And then
How
yeah, go
big,
ahead.
just out of curiosity, like, so you're talking about 2.5 and 3.5. So in comparison, like they just launched the James Webb telescope. Like, how big are those compared to James Webb?
That's that's a really good question. Let me see. How big is Webb?
Let's do
Uh,
some research
it's
here.
yeah, yeah. The whole telescope is like 20 meters, but the
Okay.
mirror isn't that big. It's let's see, it's a 6.5. Okay, yeah, it's a 6.5 meter diameter mirror.
Okay.
So
So
Hubble
about
was
half the size.
it's like twice the size.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
Webb is like twice the size of our 3.5.
Okay.
Hubble was 2.5 meter. So yeah, you know, Webb is twice the size. That's a big telescope.
Yeah. And they put it in space to boot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
and not even in orbit. They put it at J2,
Yeah, which
which is even
is
more impressive.
yeah, for sure.
Or L2, yeah, L2,
Yeah.
the Lagrange point.
What
Um,
what are some of the things that you guys did with the telescopes that you worked with down in New Mexico? I know you mostly worked on the instrumentation. Maybe tell us a little bit about the improvements that you made to the telescopes down there and what you were able to achieve.
yeah, yeah, totally. So I kind of came in with Joe. He was designing this instrument called Arctic. It's a really high resolution imager for the 3.5 meter telescope. Um, and so, you know, I helped him kind of get that online, build that up and put it on the telescope and get first light. So I think that was kind of the big one. A lot of the most fun stuff that I did, honestly, was like during summer shutdown. So
Hmm.
every summer, basically, they take, you know, a month or 2 months and just kind of like clean the telescopes, you fix everything that needs fixing. Because, you know, during the year, every night is observing for the most part. So there's
Okay.
no slowdown, there's no maintenance, there's no nothing. So they take like a month or two. And that's, I mean, that was such a hoot. It's like, so one of the things we did was pull the mirror out of the 3.5 meter telescope. And I mean, when I tell you like we pull a 3.5 meter mirror, I can't even stress like how horrifying this process is. It's it's like a 2 ton mirror, and it's held by it's got this hole in the middle of it, right? And it's just held by this like puck that sits in there, and it comes up out of the telescope, and it's got like a quarter of an inch on each side. You know, it has to come straight up out, and the mirror costs like, you know, $20 million.
Right. So no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, we pull this thing up with a crane, and it comes down out of the building, down 3 stories into this like gigantic semi truck that was built just to house this mirror, which is, you know, of course, wide load, like way wider than any lane of traffic. Um, and you know, we got out there on a ladder over the middle of the mirror, just like dangling over it, like securing the mirror. And I mean, just absolutely horrifying. I don't think I've had an adrenaline rush quite like that ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like absolutely nerve-wracking. I mean, I can't even get from my bedroom to my office without tripping on something. So I would imagine that I would probably be not the ideal candidate to work on a $20 million mirror.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got hand tools, you know, that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
doing restraints with, right? And it's like you have them just over this mirror, and you know, better not drop it.
Yeah,
So
sounds safe.
Yeah, if you have
Yeah.
butterfingers at all, I think they kind of relegate you to the back and tell you you're
The
not going
dust
anywhere near it.
sweeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
What kind of like, just out of curiosity, like, it's funny that you mentioned Apollo 13 because I always see these memes talking about, like, what was it, like 4 kilobytes of memory got them to the moon, and now a computer with 8 gigs of RAM like trembles in the shadow of a Google Chrome tab. Um, But what kind of like technology did you guys use out of the telescope? Or were you working on like Windows Vista laptops, or do you have like quantum computing machines out there?
You would be astonished at how low tech some of the stuff is. Um, so if there's anything I can say about astronomers, they're kind of a stodgy, kind of old-fashioned bunch.
Yeah.
And so they're really dedicated to like the problems that they know.
Hmm.
So if you want to go and upgrade a system, they're going to complain endlessly about it because now they have new problems. They're
Yeah.
old problems, and maybe they have a smaller problem, but they don't want to learn that new problem. That's
Yeah.
that's tough. So we end up with just like yeah, like you said, like Windows Vista, like old school like monochrome monitors with the mechanical keyboards attached to them. It's crazy just some of the old stuff that's there, and some of the legacy software and equipment is
Yeah.
just it's so hard to replace that it becomes not worth the effort. So you just have this like server rack from 1973 sitting gathering dust, and nobody knows how the wiring works, and like don't ever touch it because if you
Yep.
unplug something it'll never work again. um,
We have very similar issues in software engineering where, like, you have tech debt and you're like, we should update to the newest version of MySQL, but that could destroy the entire production application. So we're just going to leave it alone.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
works, and
It
sometimes
works
you don't
now. We're
even
going
know
to be fine.
why. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
No, dude, I go back and look at code that I wrote 6 months ago and I go, first of all, who absolutely wrote this, dumpster fire of code? And then when I realize it's me, I'm like, oh. And then you're like, but you don't even understand what you did in the first place. And as soon as you touch it, it breaks. And like, you're the guy
yeah,
that
of
wrote
course.
it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, like, I'm definitely like feeling a lot of synergy between like astronomers and software engineers and the types of problems we have when updating tech, for sure.
yeah. It's amazing how you can be, a PhD level academic and have, this limited understanding of some system and just go like, nope, I'm not touching that ever.
Yeah.
It's gonna just crumble to dust and I'll never be able to fix it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, like you write code and it works and you go, great, we're done with it.
Yep.
Maybe you comment it, and commenting will not save you.
No, no, of course not. And
No.
I think when anytime you like actually like get through any complex problem, it's almost like you have PTSD, right? Where you just forget that you like black out like the fact that you just went through that feature request, right? You're like, nope, not gonna store that in my memory anymore. Because you just get to the end of it and you just want to be done with it.
Yep.
At least
Wash
that's
your
my
hands of it.
experience. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
people always think of like, they think of an observatory and they think we have like, the whole giant array of like flat screens and, it looks like something out of Batman. And really it's just like some guy sitting in a room with like an Atari,
Yeah.
and just kind of punching at buttons until something happens.
So wait, let me get this straight. So when you guys are working at telescopes, is it kind of like software engineers where like everybody thinks like we're sitting there coding like 170 words per minute, like typing, and really like we're just Stack Overflowing stuff until we like copy and paste the solution in, and we're like, oh, good, I got a different error. That means I'm making progress.
That's
It-
100% it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very not glamorous, right? Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah,
I
there's
love it.
really, I mean, once you get down into the depths of an observatory, it's not sexy.
Yeah, it is not something you want to highlight for sure. Oh god, I love that. Okay, so you worked at the telescope in New Mexico. UW was kind enough to send you down to New Mexico to work on the telescope, and then for some reason you thought, "Hey, I'm going to go back and get my master's because I haven't been in school for 5 years." But you chose mechanical engineering. So, which, by the way, love that. That's just such an epic and exciting career path. So, what was your deciding factor to get out of to move? Obviously, I'm hearing a lot of correlation between I like to work on stuff. I didn't like the data and the research. So that, I mean, talk to us a little bit about your journey into mechanical engineering, and then let's get into the good stuff. I think we've spent a good amount of time already talking about astronomy, and we haven't even got to the juicy bits yet.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was really it. It was really like I want to work on stuff. I like to build things. I saw opportunities to improve things and build stuff, and I just didn't really have the knowledge necessary to back that up and make that a reality. And mechanical engineering as a discipline really offered that to me. There was a lot of, it seemed like a no-brainer, really. The ROI on it was great. It's like take a year and a half, get your master's, gain all this knowledge in practical applications of what you want to do. Because up until then, everything that I had done was physics. Like I could sit down and write out electromagnetical equations all day long, and solve weird physics problems with stuff in vacuums and no friction. But I wanted to know, how do I apply that? And ME was just really a no-brainer for that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just dove into it and kept working at the university, at the observatory and everything while I was doing it. Just really learned like hands-on, just pumped my head full of knowledge, and then kind of struck out into the world.
Cool. And then, so is there any sort of, I guess, first and foremost, talk to us a little bit about what an optomechanical engineer does, because I don't think that's a term that a lot of people are familiar with. Actually, it's a term I wasn't familiar with. Uh, and I've kind of figured it out from talking to you a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about, what your roles and responsibilities are, and what somebody in your position does.
Yeah, it's a little niche. There's mechanical engineers all over the place, but opto ME, I like to just boil it down and say I'm a mechanical engineer that knows how to work with glass. Um, glass is a weird material, and and it requires certain considerations. But I mean, at the core of it, there's a lot more optics involved in it. My physics background, I learned a lot of optical theory, and that's really like a core part of what an opto ME does. So, we have the considerations of, the mechanical constraints of a system, and how to design it correctly, how to manufacture it, what materials to use, all that kind of stuff. But then we also, we take designs from optical engineers, and they just have this kind of, ethereal lens design kind of in the ether, and they go, here you go, make it a thing. And we take that and we package it, and protect it correctly, and make it a reality. So really an opto ME kind of takes the optical theory and makes it a thing, makes it a physical thing.
Okay. And what kind of like, let's talk a little bit about like, for what you guys do. I think, talking about like specifically what you do, and I'm pulling up my notes over here at Microsoft. A lot of what you guys worked on, like you said, is optics. So, what goes into creating these optics? I mean, are you guys just sitting down, with a piece of draft paper and like, drawn like a lens, and then like, or I mean, I'd assume it's a lot of like high level modeling and, like computer simulations, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a ton of simulation. There's this huge amount of front end work that goes into it, where we all sit down with our computers and we start simulating, the optics and the mechanics, and just start subjecting them to real world problems, and imperfections. I think that's a huge part of the engineering side of it. You can design a thing and have it work perfectly in simulation, but when you build it, it's never perfect.
Hmm.
So it's we spend a lot of time going through. What happens if I move this lens by 15 microns in this direction, or what happens if the curvature of a lens is wrong a little bit, or if I apply a force to this housing and it deflects this direction, what does that do to the optical performance?
Yeah.
Uh, and there's a huge amount of simulation that goes into this.
Yeah.
I see I see some of the computers that my colleagues buy just to do this simulation, and it just blows my mind the amount of money that you can spend on a simulation computer.
What kind of computer are we talking about? Like a like a Mac, or I guess in your case a Microsoft PC that's like maxed out for computer editing, or like are there like quantum computers on the market that we're just not, like us, like normal people are not aware of?
I wish I had a really cool answer to that, like like we had some cryo chamber with like a
Yeah.
computer in it or something.
Yeah.
But really, it's basically just like, how many cores can I pile into this computer, and how many sticks of RAM can I shove into this case?
Yeah.
Um, I need 128 cores and like 256 gigs of RAM, and just stupid
Jeez.
specs on these computers. Yeah, they're outrageous, and they just
How
crunch
long
data all day long.
how long do these simulations take?
Oh, hours, days. I mean, long,
Okay.
long time. Yeah.
Okay. And then you guys just you get the printout on the other side, and then you're like, all right, we're just gonna go build this, and you just machine it, or like what's the
Yeah, basically it cranks out a table of like, here's what's going to happen in all different scenarios. One of the most interesting simulations in my mind is like a Monte Carlo simulation, which
Mhm.
is you perturb like 100, 1,000 different things in a bunch of different ways and kick out the result at the end of it, and it just cranks out this enormous table of like, here's how the system's going to behave if you move this thing by a little bit. But it
Wow.
does it, thousands and thousands and thousands of times.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really super interesting, and it's funny because the process itself is so cool, and then the result is just like this Excel spreadsheet. You
Which
just get
is what we've been trying to get away from since high school, but never can quite escape it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Microsoft permeates every facet of your life.
it is everywhere, and you will never escape it. And then you get
Are
to
you a
deal
lot
with like, oh, and this Excel thinks that my result is a date instead of a number. Great, thanks a lot.
I love it. So what you're working on right now, I think the most exciting applications for this stuff are, augmented reality, virtual reality, and, like you said, mixed reality, right? Optics. Yeah, I got my Quest 2 sitting over here. I love it. I can sit down and we can finish up here. I can go play 18 holes of golf in my just right here in my office. It's incredible. But talk to us a little bit about the future applications of mixed and augmented reality, but more importantly, how does what you guys are doing, um, how does that help drive the field forward? But also as somebody who's working in the industry every day, where do you see what do you see the roadmap for for augmented and mixed reality, and where are we going in the world? Like, am I going to just like, is somebody come over here and like surgically glue optics to my eyeballs, and then I'm just going to start doing, like, I'm just going to always be in augmented reality, or like where are we headed here?
Yeah, you joke, but I think we're not that far off.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know. One of the big kind of goals of the industry right now is creating like a socially acceptable, basically a pair of glasses that is an augmented reality device. I know there are various companies that are kind of chasing that. Um, if Facebook did their partnership with Ray-Ban, where they had like
Hmm.
basically cameras in your glasses. You can document what you're doing as you go, and it far surpasses like having your cell phone out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I took it to Coachella and had a great time with it. Wrote an article about it. It was really
Wow.
interesting. But I think, to me, it's going to be your smartphone, but on your face. It's going to be,
I love that.
notifications like in your face.
Yeah.
Directions like at a glance. Google has now teased this application that they have that's like basically instantaneous translation
Oh,
for,
wow.
you read a sign or somebody speaks to you in a different language, and they can translate that to text to your eye instantly. And I mean, the applications are just endless. They're whatever you can dream up. Like, I mean, Ready Player One is gonna be a thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's gonna be wild. I mean, I think the next 10 years we're gonna see just a huge boom in the applications and the technology because everyone's driving toward it.
Yeah.
Um, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, where Snap even is in on this now. Everyone has teased these devices, um, and with all these huge powerhouses in the game, I mean, something cool is going to come out of it for sure. And I really think it's going to be an interesting kind of Wild West when the devices hit, where it's going to be like, who's going to create the next killer app, right?
Yeah.
Like an iPhone with no apps is just a phone. It
Yeah.
really takes the app developing community to make it a powerhouse. And I think we're going to see a lot of really creative people come up with some really cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. How does how does what you do as an optomechanical engineer, like let's talk a little bit about the actual mechanics of these devices, right? So how do they work? I mean, what do we just I mean, how, it's glass and, what else? Is it just like these transparent LED screens or I mean, are they embedded in the glass? Like how does that stuff work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's really proprietary, but the gist of it is basically there's like a tiny projector, and when I say tiny, I mean like small, like can fit in the arm of your glasses,
Mhm.
um, and it projects light into a glass plate, and then that relays the light in directly into your eye. So it's basically like having a like a film projector just projecting straight into your eye.
Oh,
Um,
wow, okay, so
yeah.
the glass is actually intact, and you're actually projecting onto the glass surface. Got it,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. And so,
cool.
yeah, and so you can see through it. And so, through like crazy software magic that I don't even begin to understand, you can create holograms and like lock them to the physical world via, world tracking cameras. So you can take a thing and like plant it in your room and walk around it, touch it, move it.
Mhm.
It's wild. I mean, I've used a HoloLens too. I have one actually here in my house, and I'll just like play with it and just be blown away by what it can do. I mean, it's truly sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And how, like, do these things need to connect to the internet? Or, I mean, and how does that work, if you have a set of glasses, augmented reality glasses on that's not connected to the internet? Like, or, I mean, are we basically gonna need to have Starlink everywhere in order for these things to work? Or, I mean, what's the roadmap for the connectivity?
Yeah, as far as I know, there's a few approaches to it. I think probably what most people are shooting for right now is like tethering it to your phone, so it'll be like a Bluetooth
Oh, okay.
device. I have to imagine that like 5G is going to be a thing.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
why wouldn't you put it in a device? It's small, it's light, it's easy. So I imagine that cellular connectivity will be a big feature. I kind of equate it to like taking your smartwatch, like take your Apple Watch and just stick it on your face, and that's kind of
Okay.
yeah.
I'm sensing a general theme of just take it and stick it on your face,
Basically,
right?
that's my
Yeah.
whole job essentially. Is like build a thing, stick it on your face, shoot light into your eye, and see what happens. Try
That's
not to
not
get wet.
harmful at all, right?
No, no,
Like,
absolutely
shoot,
not. Laser radiation is not a safety concern
it's
at
not a
all.
thing. It's not
Yeah.
actually a thing. Yeah. When you talk about laser radiation, I always think about, I'm a huge, Big Bang Theory fan. Me and my wife have watched literally every episode. So I think about Leonard's laser lab when you talk about shooting lasers into people's eyes. Safe, really safe.
Absolutely.
Um, How do you think some of this stuff relates to, the privacy laws and, um, security issues? A lot of this stuff, I've even been looking at some of the previews, like you're talking about, like the Apple glasses and these new Ray Bans, and there seems to be the potential for, a lot of, I don't know if I want to call it confidential data, but like think about just walking down the street, being able to like read license plates, being able to read, all sorts of different things. Like how does ethics, and I have to imagine there's a lot of machine learning that goes into this stuff too. So, in the ethical discussion, how are you guys, like, I know that you work specifically in the optomechanical, but like, how are they looking at privacy and ethics with this stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a really big question mark right now. I mean, look at how Google Glass did, right?
Hmm.
It was this groundbreaking device. It was way ahead of its time, and people got shouted at and assaulted because they had cameras on them.
Hmm.
People do not like having a camera in their face 100% of the time, and
Yep.
I think that that is really the biggest open question for me right now in this tech space is how is the world going to deal with having more cameras, having a camera on your face? What are the privacy concerns with like eye tracking, right? Like eye tracking
Yeah.
is a piece of AR, and if I can track your eye, I know what you're looking at. Like, how are
Hmm.
people going to feel about that? Um, and that's a huge question, and I don't think anybody has a really good answer for that yet. That's kind of the social acceptability part of it that I think is missing is, how do you convince people to strap a camera to their face and shove that in all their friends' faces all the time?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a huge ethics question. And like you said, I mean, you could walk into, a place with confidential information and just unwittingly take pictures of stuff that should not have been photographed, right? Like
Yeah.
it bears in mind, this huge extra consideration um, that I think is going to be, really core to how this technology pushes out into the world. And I wish I had a good answer for it. I don't, but
Yeah.
I'm sure
Well,
someone.
I think it just goes to show like how cutting edge the stuff that you're working on is right now. It's just like when machine learning, I mean, even now, AI and machine learning's been around for a while, and there's the ethics discussion is still, top of mind because, how do you, how do you quantify that? How do you come up with, with a workable policy, I guess across everything, right? And, like you said, we're gonna have different manufacturers. It's just like Apple versus Google. It's like your iPhone is far more secure than an Android, and so we're probably going to see varying levels of policy as these devices roll out. But I mean, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that they're coming, right?
Yeah,
I think that, like you said, Google Glass was way ahead of its time. But even we've been talking about a lot, AR, VR, the metaverse, it's not like Unity or Unreal Engine are new technologies. People have been building video games with them for, decades now, but it's the application and how they actually get used. And that's really what's changing right now, right? And I think that's the part that's left to be seen, right? Is how are we going to apply this stuff in an ethical way that doesn't infringe on people's privacy? There, even I was down in Chiapas in southern Mexico not too long ago, and like they let you tour the churches and stuff down there, but you're not allowed to take photographs. And like you said, getting in the situations where people really feel like it's a violation of their privacy, but I think the applications it's such an exciting time to be in tech. Like I said, just being able to go and actually play golf in my office is great, but the real world applications are where this stuff is really going to make the difference. I think
yeah.
that's paramount. What I know we're running out of time here, but just kind of like a last final thought, what are you most excited about in the coming years in your field? Like, what are the things that excite you most and make you want to get up and show up to work every day?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I supply the hardware.
Hmm.
The hardware is really interesting to me, and it's obviously it's my my field, it's my area of study and focus. But the real the real kind of commanding thing for me is, like I said, who's gonna develop the next killer app? Who's gonna develop the applications that really drive AR and MR forward? um, the hardware is going to progress. It's just going to kick along like hardware does. We're going to make it better every day. And that's, that's exciting to me. But I think, I think what's really going to blow my mind is when somebody like creates Flappy Fish, right? For
Huh.
your augmented reality glasses or something, and it turns into a cultural phenomenon. And
Yep.
that's what's really going to blow my mind is when that first thing hits that like everybody has to have.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious what that's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Maybe it'll be like a real live Crossy Road or something like that.
Yeah, and and it's going to be something totally mundane, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be
No,
like
100%.
some really stupid game or something that turns into just the biggest meme in internet history.
Yeah.
So
Just everybody has to have it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see what that's going to be. That's what keeps me driving forward.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, everybody. Again, Jason Lozo, Senior Optomechanical Engineer at Microsoft, joining us today on Tech Backstage. Thanks for listening in, and we hope everybody has a good day. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks a lot, man.